What's going on, gamers? So I thought about having a discussion, talking about a little bit of kind of a roundup of the year, right? And also, Phil Spencer saying how there's more unannounced titles coming. Not only that, but I bet a lot of you are probably curious, what moves will Microsoft make next? Because it's gotten pretty interesting looking at Nintendo and Sony, right? Definitely Sony, still just being ridiculous. And you wonder that since they went ahead and did what they did and got the public rage, will Microsoft do the right moves or will they join the anti-consumer video game spree that's been going on lately? And honestly, I think the best way to prepare for something mentally like this is to tell yourself one day I do expect to see Game Pass go up to $25 a month. And if you are ready for that mentally and it doesn't hit you by surprise, then you wouldn't be surprised and you would say, I kind of expected that. Oh, and that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm like, yeah, I expect that to happen, but hopefully Microsoft doesn't shoot themselves in the face because usually they do, man. And I'm telling you, because these companies they're a little bit slick, and Microsoft has to be more slick because they're not in a gaming position to be able to do what Sony and Nintendo have been doing and kind of get away with it in a sense. And I think you guys know what I mean. Um, So that's kind of a topic I'm going to dive into a little bit. And I think it is important to talk about that so we can realize what's going to be peering into the present, coming out of the future eventually. So Phil Spencer feels great about Xbox's 2025 slate of games with more unannounced titles to come. So we'll talk about this real quick. One, we've seen Microsoft's lineup for the year. We know potentially they could have a Gears of War collection or Gears of War 1 remake, whatever, something like that, Gears of War trilogy that could be coming to multiple platforms. And I think it's right not to show off anything because they could just be working on the Switch aspect as well, along with all the other titles. So they can have all of them announced at once. And we know that there's going to be a big war going on this year between Microsoft and Sony, and it's going to be about being the biggest publisher. Obviously, we know, as I've told you before back in January, that I think Microsoft and Nintendo will be getting top publisher a month a lot. And if Rockstar drops GTA, they're going to be up there as well. So we can kind of see who's going to be having a lot of publishing power for the rest of this year and looking at next year. Well, Microsoft for sure, because after doing their monopolizing, um, we know that they're going to be doing a lot of publishing on their own console and they're going to be publishing already on PlayStation. They already have it dropping this month. People are playing Forza right now, you know what I mean, with the early access. So obviously their anti-consumer move this year would be still trying to charge $100 for older games. Like I said, man, you kind of see this type of behavior everywhere, and it's like, yeah, we know you guys all do that, so you guys got to pick and choose with that. And there'll be some people that are laugh at that, saying, yeah, we got Game Pass, y'all are doing this and that, and we can get the early upgrade or whatever. And over on PlayStation, you don't really have that type of perk. So yeah, depending on how you want to look at it, I mean, that is anti-consumer. And all of them do their type of practices, so there's no doubt about that. Even our own base will deal with stuff like that. And they're going to continue to do that. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter if you complain; they're going to do that method, and you can't ignore it. Yeah, you can, but there's some people, like MVG and them that guys. I have to say this: it's like when the game was out on Xbox, or even if they had a PC, right? They looked at the game differently, and now when the game comes to PlayStation, all of a sudden it gets some type of positive treatment, and it's like, but it's the same game. It's the same experience. Like people with that type of mentality, that's how you know that yeah, there is some type of fanboy aspect. Like I've seen people that have a PlayStation 5 and Xbox, though they're PlayStation fanboys, they'll never touch their Xbox. But they kind of got it to make it seem like they probably might be supporting both, but they never play it. And there's a game that'll be on Game Pass on the Xbox, and they will buy it on the PlayStation. So it's like you could have just had that experience right there and paid less. But no, this is what I said by like when it comes to like the human emotion, the tribal aspect, the code aspect, that even if you could have services that are better in a different location, there'll be some people that will not leave that location. Like Game Pass being on PC, but then they go and hit the buy button on Steam every time because they don't want to get off of the Steam profile. Yeah, it could be like that. Some people don't care, and like you said, and like I said, logically, it's not going to make sense because there's a lot more to logic than what you're dealing with. So that's my take on that. That's why you have people stay in the PlayStation ecosystem. Game Pass will not move them. It'll have to be something where it's like, oh, he already has a solid PC, so let me just put the app in front of them like that, and then get some numbers off of that because they're not going to go buy the console to get those type of deals because somebody like that would rather keep their profile and keep buying for that profile. Just like somebody would rather stay on Fortnite for 7 years and not go to a new game. As soon as they go try something over there, they'll just run back to that and keep supporting that because they've invested into that and they're not letting that go. They would have to shut it down. And the same thing's going to happen for the Switch. Same thing we saw happen with the PS4 to the PS5. And then when it came to the Xbox One, it didn't have the same type of carryover. And Phil Spencer's talked about this multiple times. So that's my thing. Because I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, so what is Microsoft going to do? They realize Game Pass has a limitation now. They realize they can't really sell any more hardware. They realize that being a strong publisher is also important. So the only thing we're left with now that we know that they could possibly do to be more pro-consumer is the Steam hybrid route. You know what I'm saying? Ponies, sit down. Because after they do that, man, I mean, there's only so many angles we can hit, y'all. To where it's like, what else can you really do now? You know what I mean? If that's going to happen the way that it's going to happen, and I hope so, because I think that's the best route they could possibly go. So, what else can Microsoft really do at this point, y'all? Because there's only so much you can do in gaming to where it's like, well, we did everything we could. I swear they've searched everything. You know how like you run out of toothpaste and you're like, man, if I squeeze the hell out of this, I know I could get like a couple weeks more of brushing. And Microsoft has ran the thing so dry that nothing's coming out of that toothpaste. That's their method trying, like in the gaming industry, because they've been in backs to the wall after making so many mistakes, having all the money they need. They've tried everything you could possibly have. They're reaching into every corner. But I kind of like them being in that position because they start bringing out things where you're like, okay, okay, cool. I guess you could stay around because of that. So yeah, that's pretty relevant. I like this benefit. Oh, we got to Game Pass because of that. Um, so what the hell's next that you're going to think of? Well, I think that it's going to have to do something with cloud, like taking some type of leap where it's like now you could do cloud the same as you could when you're downloading a video game. Now you can do cloud this way to where like the internet's a little bit more open on cloud. And now there's not much of a difference between technology. Like we're going to eventually get to that one day, if you guys get what I mean. So I think Microsoft would want to lead in that type of aspect. Like you know how you have NVIDIA Shield? You can get on NVIDIA Shield and pay for it, and you practically have like a high-end gaming PC to a certain extent. That's why I'm going to tell people Nintendo will be more dangerous around that time, even then, because the things that people will complain about them about is, like I said, price dropping, and then like, oh man, if only you have better technology so I can play your stuff on Max. And when that type of stuff happens, then it's there's no more technology differences. That's why your in-house is the most important. Because once technology differences are gone, then it's going to be what it's always been. Why, who sold what then? Why they sold a lot, Nintendo? Why Sony sold a lot? It's because of the games that people wanted to play on there. Because the development was that good. And Sony got really good deal on games. So what I think is that when those hardware differences definitely disappear, Nintendo's not going to be in trouble. They're going to be okay, even though they sell hardware, because they're fantastic developers. Sony is the one that is kind of going to have to worry because they've always relied off of selling a lot of hardware. You see what I'm saying? And selling third party games on their hardware, not selling a lot of consoles because of their in house. So if they have a service in the future, they better have their shit together and they have to start now because that game is over with. See, that's why I said the difference between Nintendo and Sony in that type of situation. See, Microsoft monopolized, so they could be okay in a certain sense. Is that like I said, Sony wants to brag about selling the hardware and vampiring off of a whole bunch of other people being successful. When the hardware gets taken away, their whole game is done. Whereas Nintendo's like, oh, well, I'm still a better developer than on you, so I'm okay. You know what I mean? And my stuff's just going to be on max settings with, with no hardware being so. Whereas not with Sony. So that's where I think the game's going to be interesting because I'm looking at the game down the line, like years from now, compared to what it is now. When we do get to digital stream cloud, which is obviously the future, and a controller that can do all of them, and you're picking a service, or you have something like Shield up and running, and you're trying to choose a service with no hardware differences, it's going to be interesting. That's where I feel like Microsoft is okay because they will be preparing for something like that, and they're already kind of in that type of position. But right now, that's not going to look very good for them because it's still kind of early for that world. We're definitely gonna have to get up into the 30s to where we start seeing that world appear a little bit more. And the internet's so good it ain't gonna matter. You know what I mean? But in the meantime, yeah, what is Microsoft going to do to stay relevant leading up to that? Because they have to find ways to do that. And a lot of people are thinking maybe they just will be a publisher because it will lead into something like that. And that's where Satya is right down the line. But it's not the right mentality to have outside of the Xbox ecosystem. Do we understand this as a gamer, like being intelligent, that I'm not going to project the Xbox strategy onto the Nintendo platform, onto the PlayStation platform? It's not going to work. Sony showed you the best that it could for PlayStation, that hybrid aspect, and not putting their games there day one because they would kill their sales. And they know that. But if you can still get sales, then you wouldn't do that because it doesn't make any sense. That's just like self sabotage. Like, why would you need to do that? No, you only do that when it's necessary. And we know that the market is not there as a mainstream aspect. It's like, somebody was like, I'm doing AK this, AK that. I mean, that's still nice, even if you said that a few years ago, but the majority of the market is not there. So when the majority of the market is not there, then it's just kind of sitting there and nobody's going to use it. That's the problem with too much technology. No, you have to learn how to utilize your technology the best what you have. That's one thing Nintendo does very, very, very good. They'll be at these settings where you're like, bro, we were at these settings a while ago. Yeah, but you've been at those settings, but all you've done is cancel games, drop off games, jack up the price of games that didn't meet that quality. You have all that technology, but you're having the worst generation of all time because it's not about better technology if you don't have all the other categories in place. Sony's a perfect example of that. Microsoft is learning some things too. Yeah, you have this technology, but yet, why are all these problems here? Because as far as I'm concerned, all the technology is doing is giving you a better presentation on the surface. You're just coding it to me, but there's so many problems behind the presentation and underneath it. You see? I would rather have a better developer than better technology because I know that developer is always going to be reliant. And all I have to do is give him better tools. And because he's already great, he's going to use those better tools better. But why is it that you're getting better tools, but your games are worse? Because you've gotten worse. It's not the tools that make the game, it's the one holding the tools, the tool maker. You see what I mean? So that's where you realize you you use the tool, you don't be the tool. Be a smart human, not a dumb human, right? This technology is getting too smart, and people are being too ignorant. In that case, I have to say that, guys, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people say the same thing when Unreal Engine 5, all these unnecessary engines, but it's like, you have more money than ever now. You have more technology than ever now. Come on, let's knock it out the park. You see what I mean? So that's kind of my take on that between like these three. So yeah, if you don't have that staff, you don't have any, everything going right inside those companies, then it doesn't matter how much technology you have. Things are going to crash and burn. And we see that it's right in front of our face. So video games are not about better technology. Now, what needs to be better is what's inside the video game development departments and in those publishing realms. So yeah, this is kind of something that I kind of wanted to talk about. There's not a lot of news right now coming out to talk about certain other things. And then I want to do a video talking about will tariffs affect Microsoft, and they will. Because a lot of people are thinking because they're an American company that they're okay, and I was like, no, that's not true because the parts that they're manufacturing are in Asian territory. So yes, How would they reply to that? And we'll get to that in another video. But there we have it. Let me know what y'all think. Like, comment, subscribe. Have a great day. Peace out, y'all. Ponies, sit down.